I mean, John Dean is not a fact witness. He's never talked to Don McGahn. He's never talked to President Trump. He's never talked to Christopher Steele. So you can rule out him having any facts that might benefit the American public. He's not a legal expert on obstruction. He did pay his debt to society. So I wouldn't have spent my 5 minutes relitigating his criminal history. But he's not a fact witness. So it begs the question to Jerry Nadler, why would you call someone who can't help the American people on the facts or the law? And the reality is, Jason, and you were there almost as long as I was. This story, they wanted to get it started right after the inauguration, and they want to keep it going until November of 2020. And even having pathetic, sad hearings that don't benefit anyone other than the folks who buy advertising on television, that's part of this effort to keep it alive.
Well, they don't even sell advertising on C-SPAN, and I can't imagine people were even wasting their time trying to watch that clown show. When you bring up two convicted felons, Michael Cohen and John Dean, as the way you're going to propel this, I don't know how Democrats with a straight face look in the camera and say, oh, yeah, we're trying to get to the bottom and do the work of the American people. Now, part of what also happened in the committee...
Hey, I'll tell you how they do. I'll tell you how they do.
Yeah?
Because they're never asked about it, Jason. I mean, how many times have you and I discussed? And look, you were really, really good with the media when you were there. I constantly watched you stop and talk to print reporters, and most of the rest of us wouldn't do it. I hope even you have realized now the duplicity and the relativism with which Republicans are covered versus Democrats. If you, as the chairman of oversight, had called someone like John Dean, who's not a fact witness, he's not a legal expert, about the best he can give you is a day in the life in federal prison. That's the best he's going to be able to give you. You would have been excoriated. You don't hear any of that about Nadler.
No,
you don't hear any of that.
The media wouldn't even ask us those questions. I issued a subpoena for Brian Pagliano, the IT specialist for Hillary Clinton, who said he served 4 years in the with Hillary Clinton and had never sent or received an email. And he had an immunity agreement. We asked him to come before the committee, and almost nobody even covered the hearing because he didn't show up. Yeah, and they said, oh, it's not a big deal.
In case you forgot, I was there. Hey, how about 6 years worth of not being able to get information from President Obama's administration? I mean, where was the outrage? Where are the Politico, Hill, Washington Post articles about how outrageous it is the executive branch is not cooperating with legitimate oversight? You don't see any of it. So, look, I get that our former line of work ain't that popular, but folks in the media are not trusted as much as we need them to be in a robust, thriving democracy. And at some point, they need to ask themselves, I wonder why we're not trusted. I wonder why people think that we're in the tank for the Democrats, and I think you see a little bit of that this week.
No, you see it every week along the way. Now,
maybe more than a little.
Yeah, one of the things that also happened this week is they wanted to hold, and they did vote in the Oversight Committee, a committee you and I were both on, and both chaired, to hold Attorney General Barr and the Secretary of Commerce, Wilbur Ross, in contempt. I mean, I can't believe they did this, but what was your take on it?
You know, Jason, we held Eric Holder in contempt for the failure to produce documents. You and I were not the chairman at the time. But there is tension between the branches over whether or not to produce documents and whether or not there's been an accommodation. There's actually litigation still on with this. So it's kind of like holding Barr in contempt for not turning over the Mueller report. By law, he cannot turn over certain parts of it. So you're going to hold him in contempt for following the law. In this instance, they're holding Wilbur and the Attorney General in contempt for not turning over documents related to something that's currently part of litigation. But if you can do it and get away with it and never be questioned and never be challenged by your base or the media, why not?
No, in the case of Wilbur Ross, there's a pending Supreme Court decision that's going to happen at the end of the month. They have 3 scheduled witnesses from the Department of Commerce. Wilbur Ross testified for hours before the committee. They have turned over 14,000 documents, and this rush to try to hold them in contempt before the Supreme Court comes out and there's decision. And yet nobody is writing these stories because they don't ask the core questions. I've got just a moment left, but I want to get your take on Andrew McCabe calling for the impeachment of Donald J. Trump. What's your take?
Oh, JC, all right. Go back to the criticism of Trump this week because he wasn't sure whether he'd call the FBI. I hope he does. I would encourage him to call the FBI. But let's think about who he would have gotten on the phone if he had called in the summer of 2016. Comey, who thinks impeachment's too good for you. McCabe, who despite his own legal distractions, wants to weigh in and say Trump ought to be impeached. Or Brennan, who wants to do one more than that and actually put you on trial for treason, a crime for which you can be put to death. So that's who he's supposed to call in the summer of 2016. I wish McCabe would just go on and deal with his own legal issues. I really don't know anyone who gives a damn what Andy McCabe thinks about impeachment and Donald Trump. I really don't, other than the reporter that asked him.
Well,
I don't know a single soul.
He's in big, huge legal trouble, and he better start lawyering up. And I think he's out there trying to spin his own thing because
that's where I'd put my time. I would devote my time on my own legal issues and not weigh in on other people's.
Yeah, well, he's going to be in a world of hurt soon. I can't wait for the Inspector General to report. I know you and I think a lot of Michael Horowitz, and I'm sure he did a thorough job. And what he comes out and says, I think, is probably going to be as close to the facts as we can possibly get.
You're right.